I didn't realize my parents were breaking into my apartment the first time it happened. I thought I was tired, overworked, forgetful. I'd come home and notice small things that didn't quite make sense. Lights on in rooms I never used, the faint smell of food I hadn't cooked, my bathroom mirror wiped too clean, like someone else had erased themselves in a hurry. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I'd rushed out that morning. Maybe I'd forgotten to turn something off. Maybe stress was making me paranoid. But paranoia doesn't fold your laundry differently than you do. Paranoia doesn't rearrange your kitchen cabinets into someone else's system. Paranoia doesn't leave the unmistakable impression of another body on your couch. I was 28, living alone for the first time in a small but carefully chosen apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I paid the rent myself. I chose the furniture myself. I liked knowing exactly where things were because I'd put them there. That sense of control mattered more to me than I'd ever admitted. Growing up, privacy wasn't something my family believed in. Doors were suggestions. Questions were inspections. Silence was treated like secrecy. My mother used to say, "We're family. We don't need boundaries." What she meant was, you don't get any. So when I moved out, I thought distance would finally do what conversations never had. I thought physical space would force emotional respect. I was wrong. The first time I confronted my parents about being in my apartment, I did it gently. Carefully, like someone defusing a bomb they were afraid might still explode. "Did you stop by yesterday?" I asked my mom on the phone, keeping my tone light. She didn't even hesitate. "Oh, yes. Just for a minute." "You didn't answer your phone." "A minute." She said it the same way she'd always said things, like time, space, and permission were flexible when it came to me. "I didn't know you still had a key," I said. "Well, of course I do," she replied. "What if something happened to you?" My father took the phone then. His voice was calm, reassuring, practiced. "You're overthinking this. We were just checking on you." Checking on me. That phrase followed me like a shadow. After that, the visits became quieter. No calls, no texts, no announcements. I'd come home to find my mail stacked neatly on the table already opened, my trash emptied, my fridge stocked with foods I never bought but was expected to eat. It felt less like concern and more like surveillance. One evening, I came home early from work and caught it in real time. My bedroom door was open. I stood in the hallway, keys still in my hand, listening to movement that wasn't mine. A drawer sliding shut. Soft footsteps. My mother stepped out first, startled to see me. "Oh, you're home early," she said, smiling too quickly. My father followed, acting like he belonged there. Something inside me went cold. "You didn't tell me you were coming," I said. My mother waved it off. "We knocked. You must not have heard." I knew that wasn't true. I always heard knocks. I always heard footsteps. They left 10 minutes later, and when the door closed behind them, my apartment felt unfamiliar, like a place that had been searched. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch, lights on, listening for sounds that shouldn't be there. Every creak felt intentional. Every shadow felt watched. And that was when I understood something I'd been avoiding for years. This wasn't love. It was control dressed up as concern. And if I didn't do something drastic, they would never stop. Because to them, my independence wasn't real. It was temporary. And my home, my one safe place, was already being treated like it belonged to them. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. That's what people like me learn to do early, question our instincts before questioning our parents. A cabinet door left slightly open. My throw blanket folded differently. The faint smell of my mother's perfume lingering hours after I got home. Small things, easy to dismiss, but patterns don't lie, and neither does the body when it starts bracing for impact inside a place that's supposed to be safe. I lived alone in a modest apartment on the 3rd floor of a quiet building. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. I paid the rent. I chose the furniture. I liked knowing exactly where everything was. That sense of control mattered more than I realized. Growing up, privacy had never existed in my parents' house. My bedroom door didn't lock. My journals weren't mine. Questions came disguised as concern, but they were always inspections. "Why are you writing this? Who is this about?" You shouldn't keep secrets from family. My younger brother, on the other hand, lived by different rules. His door stayed closed. His mess was ignored. His independence was praised. I learned early that boundaries were something other people got to have. So when I moved out at 28, I thought distance alone would change things. It didn't. The first time my parents showed up unannounced, my mom laughed it off. She held up a bag of groceries and said, "You never answer your phone." I was worried. She cooked like she owned the kitchen. My dad sat on my couch, flipping through mail that wasn't his. I told myself it was temporary, that once they adjusted, they'd stop. They didn't stop. They adapted. Soon it wasn't visits. It was presence. I'd come home and feel it immediately, the wrong kind of quiet, the kind that says someone has been here and left traces behind. My bathroom mirror wiped clean when I knew I hadn't touched it. My laptop closed when I always left it open. My laundry folded the way my mother preferred, not the way I did. Once, I found a note in my fridge. "You should eat better." I made soup. I hadn't asked for soup. That was when the fear started creeping in. Not loud, not dramatic, but persistent. I checked my door. It was locked. Every time. Which meant someone else had access. When I confronted my parents gently, they reacted exactly how they always had. My mother's voice turned wounded. "We're just trying to help." "You're so sensitive." My father shrugged. "You know your mother worries. Why make it a problem?" And then came the sentence that froze everything in place. "We kept a spare key. Just in case. Just in case." In case of what? In case I stopped answering. In case I started living differently. In case I became someone they couldn't monitor anymore. That night, I sat on my bed with my back against the wall, replaying years of moments I'd brushed aside. The way my phone location had once been mysteriously shared. The questions they asked that felt too specific. This wasn't concern. It was control disguised as care. The final straw came a week later. I walked in after work and found my desk chair pulled out. My computer was on. A document I hadn't opened in months sat on the screen. Someone had been reading my personal notes. My chest tightened as I scrolled. Nothing was changed. Nothing deleted. They just wanted to see. I called my mother. She didn't deny it. "I was worried about your stress levels," she said. "You hide things." That sentence snapped something clean in me. I wasn't hiding. I was protecting myself. And for the first time, I allowed myself to say the thought I'd been avoiding. If I stayed where I was, this would never stop. Distance wasn't enough. Talking wasn't enough. Boundaries only work when the other side respects them. Mine didn't. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't threaten. I didn't explain. I opened my laptop and searched for something very specific. Secure buildings. Restricted access. No spare keys. I wasn't planning revenge. I was planning escape. Because sometimes the only way to make someone respect your space is to disappear from the one they keep invading. The first time I changed the locks, I didn't tell anyone. I told myself it wasn't secrecy. It was self-preservation. Standing in the hallway while the locksmith worked, I felt ridiculous for being nervous. I was an adult. This was my apartment. I was allowed to secure my own door. And yet, my hands kept shaking like I was doing something wrong. That feeling alone should have told me everything. For 2 days, nothing happened. No unexpected visits. No rearranged furniture. No strange silences hanging in the air when I came home from work. I almost convinced myself the problem had solved itself. Then on the third night, I heard footsteps outside my door. Not loud. Careful. I froze in my kitchen, heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Through the peephole, I saw my mother standing there, purse tucked under her arm, keys already in her hand. She tried the old key. Once. Twice. The lock didn't move. Her face shifted. Not to concern, not to relief, but to irritation. Like a plan interrupted. She knocked then. Softly. Politely. As if this were normal. I didn't answer. My phone buzzed immediately. "Why did you change the locks?" "I was just stopping by." "You should have told me." Told her. As if permission still lived somewhere between us. The next morning, she acted like none of it had happened. She called to ask about my week. About my job. About whether I was eating enough. Her voice slipped into that familiar tone. Warm, worried, invasive. I interrupted her. "You can't come over without asking," I said. There was a pause. Then a small laugh. "Sweetheart, don't be dramatic. That word again. Dramatic. I hung up before she could keep talking. But boundaries don't scare people like my parents. They challenge them. Within a week, my landlord emailed me. Your parents contacted me. They said they were concerned you hadn't been answering calls and asked for access to check on you. Concern. Always concern. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I replied immediately, stating clearly that no one had permission to enter my unit without me present. The landlord apologized, but the damage was done. That evening, my sister texted me a photo. My apartment door. Taken from the hallway. Why are you locking everyone out? She wrote, Mom's really upset. I stared at the image for a long time. At the angle. The timing. The fact that she'd been there without me knowing. How did you get that? I asked. She didn't respond. That was the moment denial stopped working. This wasn't misunderstanding. It wasn't overprotectiveness. It wasn't love expressed poorly. It was control that couldn't stand being refused. The next incident came fast. I returned home to find my door unlocked. Nothing was missing. Nothing was broken. But something was wrong. A window I never opened was cracked. A chair had been moved slightly out of place. And on my kitchen counter sat a small grocery bag, my mother's brand of bread, my father's preferred coffee. A message. We can still get in. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on the floor and felt something harden inside me. That night, I called a friend and asked if I could stay over. I didn't explain much. I didn't have to. The tremor in my voice did enough talking. From their couch, I scrolled through old memories I'd buried. My room growing up always open. Journals read without permission. Privacy treated like defiance. I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for years. They weren't afraid for me. They were afraid of losing access. The next morning, I made a decision that scared me more than anything I'd done before. I stopped responding. No calls. No texts. No explanations. I documented everything instead. Dates. Times. Photos. Messages. Screenshots. The landlord's email. The grocery bag. Not because I wanted conflict. Because I needed proof. If this escalated, and something in my bones told me it would, I wasn't going to rely on being believed. For the first time, I chose preparation over peacekeeping. And somewhere deep down I knew, if they didn't stop on their own, I would stop them. Not with yelling. Not with begging. But with consequences they couldn't unlock their way out of. The first 3 days after I moved felt unreal. Too quiet. Too clean. Too mine. I kept expecting the familiar signs. Footsteps outside the door. A knock that wasn't really a request. My phone lighting up with my mother's name until guilt dragged me into answering. None of it happened. I slept through the night for the first time in years. No half-waking at every sound. No instinctive reach for my phone to check if I'd missed something I was supposed to explain. On the 4th morning, I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the city wake up below me. People moving with purpose. Lives unfolding without permission. I realized something then. My parents didn't know where I was. Not the address. Not the building. Not even the neighborhood. And for them, that wasn't distance. It was danger. I turned my phone face up for the first time since moving. The screen exploded. Missed calls stacked on top of each other. Messages overlapping. Voicemails sent minutes apart. Voices shifting from worried to sharp. Riley, call me now. This isn't funny. We're coming over. Answer your phone. Then my sister. What are you trying to prove? Mom's losing it. I didn't reply. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Certainty. They were spiraling because the one thing they'd always relied on, access, was gone. Around noon, a number I didn't recognize tried calling. I let it ring out. Then it rang again. When I finally answered, the voice on the other end was calm. Professional. Is this Riley Morgan? Yes. This is Officer Ramirez with the Denver Police Department. I just need to confirm you're safe. My stomach dropped, but my voice stayed steady. Yes. I'm safe. There was a pause. Your family reported you missing. Missing. The word landed heavy. I'm not missing, I said carefully. I moved. Another pause. Then, we'll need you to come down to the station. There was an incident at your former residence. I didn't ask what kind of incident. I already knew. When I arrived, The station smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A receptionist pointed me toward a small room down the hall. And there they were. My mother sat hunched in a chair, mascara smudged, clutching tissues like proof of suffering. My father stood beside her, jaw tight, eyes sharp, scanning the room as if looking for a way to take control. My sister paced in the corner, arms crossed, irritation barely disguised as concern. The moment my mother saw me, she stood. "Riley, where have you been?" Her voice cracked, but beneath it was something else. Accusation. As if my absence had been a betrayal. "I'm fine," I said. "You shouldn't have gone to my apartment." "That's not your apartment anymore," my father muttered. Officer Ramirez stepped in then, calm and firm. "Let's all take a seat." We did. "Ms. Morgan," she said, looking at me, "your family attempted to enter a residence they no longer have access to. The current tenants believed it was a break-in." "That's ridiculous," my mother snapped. "We were worried. We thought she was inside." "You tried to climb onto the balcony," the officer replied evenly. My sister looked away. I took a slow breath. "You lied to my landlord. You told him I was unstable, so he'd let you in." My mother flinched. I was concerned. "You read my things," I continued. "You rearranged my home. You gave out keys without asking." "That's family," my father said sharply. "No," I said. "That's trespassing." The word hung in the air, heavier than anything else that had been said. Officer Ramirez folded her hands. "Ms. Morgan, would you like to document these boundary violations?" My mother gasped. "Document? She's our daughter." "And she's an adult," the officer replied. "Intent doesn't change impact." For the first time, my father looked unsure. I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. "I moved because you wouldn't stop," I said quietly. "I didn't disappear to hurt you. I left because staying meant losing myself." Silence. Then the officer slid a form across the table. "I recommend a written boundary agreement." My parents stared at it like it was a punishment. It wasn't. It was reality in ink. And for the first time in my life, I didn't soften it for them. By the 4th day after I moved, the silence felt almost suspicious. Not peaceful, alert. Like the quiet right before someone knocks too hard. I hadn't blocked my parents. I hadn't announced anything. I had simply vanished. No forwarding address. No explanation. No dramatic goodbye. Just absence. That's when the messages started. At first, they were confused. "Where are you? Why isn't your phone going through?" Then they turned sharp. "This isn't funny. You can't just disappear like this." By evening, the tone shifted again. Public concern disguised as care. My sister tagged me in a post. "My sister is missing. Please pray." Missing. I stared at the word for a long time. I wasn't missing. I was finally somewhere they couldn't reach. I turned my phone face down and went back to unpacking. I hung my coat in a closet no one else had opened. I cooked dinner without someone rearranging my ingredients. I slept without wondering who might be watching. The next morning, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered. "Is this Riley Morgan?" a calm voice asked. "Yes. This is Officer Ramirez with the Denver Police Department. Are you safe right now?" My chest tightened, but my voice didn't shake. "I am." She paused. "Your parents reported you missing. There was also an incident at your former apartment." I closed my eyes slowly. "What kind of incident?" "They attempted to enter the unit. The current occupants believed it was a break-in." "Of course they did, because my parents didn't knock. They never had." "I can come in," I said. "If you need me." "We do." The station smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I was led into a small conference room. They were already there. My mother sat hunched at the table, mascara smudged, clutching tissues like evidence of her suffering. My father stood behind her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the room as if looking for leverage. My sister paced near the wall, arms crossed, annoyance barely disguised as fear. When my mother saw me, she gasped and stood. "Riley, where have you been?" Her voice cracked perfectly. "We thought something terrible happened." I didn't move toward her. "I moved," I said. Her face fell, not with relief, but with offense. "You moved," she repeated. "Without telling us." "Yes." My father scoffed under his breath. That's not how family works. Officer Ramirez stepped in, calm and steady. Let's focus on what happened yesterday. My mother straightened immediately. We were worried. She wasn't answering. We thought she was in danger. So you climbed onto someone else's balcony? The officer asked evenly. Silence. My sister shifted. It wasn't like that. We just slipped. I looked at them all. You tried to enter my home, I said quietly. Again. My mother's voice sharpened. We were helping you. You lied to my landlord, I said. You told him I was unstable. Her mouth opened, then closed. That's concern, she said finally. No, I replied. That's trespassing. The word landed heavily in the room. Officer Ramirez folded her hands. Ms. Morgan, would you like to document these incidents formally? My mother inhaled sharply. Document? She's our daughter. And she's an adult, the officer said. Intent doesn't negate boundaries. For the first time, I saw fear, not panic, not anger, real fear flicker across my parents' faces. I nodded. Yes, I would. My father leaned forward. Riley, think about what you're doing. I am, I said calmly. I have been for years. The officer slid paperwork across the table. This isn't a restraining order. It's a documented boundary agreement. My mother stared at the page as if it were a betrayal. I spoke clearly. You don't come to my home. You don't contact my landlord. We meet only in public spaces. You don't access my belongings, accounts, or mail. Ever. My father frowned. That's extreme. No, I said softly. It's necessary. They signed. Slowly. Reluctantly. Because for once, there was a witness. When I stood to leave, my mother whispered, I miss when you needed us. I met her eyes. You can still be in my life. You just can't control it. Outside, the cold air felt clean against my skin. For the first time, the line I'd drawn didn't blur. It held. The quiet that followed surprised me. Not the fragile kind that feels temporary, like it's waiting to be interrupted, but a deeper quiet. One that settled into my bones and stayed. After the police station, my parents didn't show up unannounced anymore. No surprise knocks. No, we were just in the area. No keys jingling on the other side of my door. The silence wasn't punishment. It was respect, finally enforced. For the first time since I'd moved out years ago, I woke up without scanning the room for signs of intrusion. My shoes stayed exactly where I left them. My notes remained untouched. My space stopped feeling like borrowed territory. I hadn't realized how exhausting constant vigilance was until I didn't need it anymore. A week later, my mother asked to meet for coffee. Public place. Neutral ground. Exactly as agreed. She arrived early and chose a table near the window, hence folded too neatly around her cup. She looked smaller there, stripped of the authority she carried inside my walls. I still don't understand why you did it this way, she said carefully. I didn't rush to explain. I told you, I replied. You didn't listen. Her lips pressed together. We were worried. I know, I said. But worry doesn't give you ownership. She looked away, eyes catching on a reflection in the glass. For once, she didn't argue. That felt bigger than any apology. My father joined us later, quieter than I'd ever seen him. He didn't lecture. He didn't justify. He simply said, we crossed a line. I nodded. That was enough. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just acknowledgement. My sister texted me afterward, a short message that surprised me. I didn't realize how bad it was. I'm sorry. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Thank you for saying that. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was movement. Back at my apartment that night, I locked the door and leaned against it, breathing out slowly. The sound of the lock clicking into place still felt symbolic, like punctuation at the end of a long, unfinished sentence. I didn't move to a bigger place. I didn't disappear from their lives. I didn't cut anyone off dramatically. I simply stopped giving access where it wasn't earned. And something unexpected happened. My relationship with myself changed. I stopped apologizing for wanting privacy. I stopped explaining why boundaries mattered. I stopped feeling guilty for protecting peace. Because peace doesn't need justification. Weeks passed. Then months. My parents followed the rules. Not perfectly, but consistently enough to matter. And when they slipped, I named it. Calmly, without fear. The difference was immediate. They adjusted, not because they suddenly understood, but because the consequences were real. One evening, standing in my kitchen as the sun dipped below the skyline, I realized something quietly powerful. I no longer felt like I was running from them. I had simply stepped into my own life. The fear that once lived in my chest, the fear of being watched, managed, overridden, had dissolved into something steadier. Confidence. Not loud, not confrontational, unmovable. My home stayed mine, and that changed everything. If they ever forgot again, I knew what to do. If they ever crossed another line, I wouldn't hesitate. Because choosing myself once had taught me how to do it again. And the door, it stayed closed,